Aloha, my friends and family. My name's Trey, and today I've got a little talk for you called The Reason Why Most People Are So Socially and Spiritually Retarded. It's by design, and if you enjoy this, if you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe, hit the notification bell, or follow me on Odyssey or Rumble for more sharing of all kinds of wisdom, especially outside of the proverbial black cube box. The reason why most people are so socially and spiritually retarded is because they are NPCs. Unfortunately, some of my teachers estimate that it's the vast majority of the human race. Seriously, this began long before the souls of most bodies were taken out or turned into attempted remote-controlled cyborg humanoid slaves via the Needle Tech Humans 2.0 plan. Okay? Years before that, the dream was hatched. The dream was hatched probably over 1 million years ago. Of course, when our false self-gods unplugged 11 of our DNA strands at least and disconnected our spirits, gradually over the subsequent centuries, their naturally abundant communication with the Great Spirit, disconnecting our spirits, their naturally abundant communication with the Great Spirit, the Christ Namulu human race being repurposed into energy slaves, he, Inky or Loser 4, closed the psychic door intentionally. Now it is up to each of us to open those doors for ourselves with strong, real, divine intention to expand into the pure truth of Christed beingness, even after all these sick experiments. After these sick experiments, how did the takedown proceed so well? A transhumanist ending to this intentional, long-term essence heisting, Look around you in a public space. Think about what a different world it is than the year I was born of 1977. The beast system needs your learned helplessness, your solipsism, to exist at all. If you trusted other people, and if you trusted enough of them, do you think that they would be able to extract so much loose from you? Thus, it is a strictly, the Matrix is on a strictly need-to-know basis to most normies. Most normies must remain ignorant and harmed for this beast system to keep going. Okay? After these sick experiments, how did the takedown proceed so well? Perhaps it began all the way back in the design of the Hinayana, the Bible thumper kind of Buddhist. The idea of personal salvation, the idea of personal enlightenment, The idea that all that matters is that you get to escape the reincarnation, memory wipe, soul-sucking energy harvest, forced death, endless human recycling, laundry cycle, and that you get to be enlightened, and that you get to fly wherever you want, and that you get to go to heaven. Because as soon as people started to believe this, all the Abrahamic followers and all the Hinayana followers, it became an obsession with the self, the little me. It fits right in hand and glove with the Matrix idea that all that matters is, paying for the box. What happens to these people, only concerned with personal salvation? Was it the false reality, dogma-based threat of punishment by means of tortures of a torrent of endless fire tormenting you permanently? What? So you don't think a spirit or spirit fragment that isn't physical can be tortured indefinitely? You don't fall for that? Oh man, you must not be like a gullible normie. Well, more rent for you. So we have the false reality thought insertion. Yes, we have, as Castaneda said, the flyers, the archons, the loser-phorians gave us their mind. The prince of the airwaves, radio station 666, constantly beaming its sick tricks into everyone's thoughts who's vulnerable, everyone's thoughts who's in a weak spot. That's right. So you must be a slave or die in a war for your conquerors. That's right. Get on your knees. And if you're not going to suck on their you-know-what, you're at least going to get on your knees and worship your conquerors. Worship your slave masters like all the other people in these cults. You must be a slave for or die in a war for your conquerors. Later, to survive more recently in a legal box, you still live and die for these same archetypal false god black cube hex. You still live and die for the same god that these certain type of rabbis strap a black cube on their third eye to worship, and these Muslims that they're into endless war with circle counterclockwise around the same archetype, the black cube control. As soon as this sick inverted concept glued itself to humanity's ass and fractured souls for a couple of thousand years, there was a great chance that Luciferians that they could subvert, terrify, with the creation of their mainstream media in Hollywood, take over and hijack most humans' minds, hearts, and souls through endless wars, satanic ritual abuse, adrenochrome, blood, and other types, and just plain old loose extraction and other incredibly sick pathological species-wide trauma bonding like the dark ET-controlled Abrahamic religions, secret societies, and Hell-Eats insane, and Hell-Eats false monarchies. So now, after the conquistadores fully leveraged the massively insane doctrine of discovery over 1,000 years ago, over 1,000 years after its collective pathology was forced upon a lot of the globe via the Council of Nicaea, like the Third Reich, that it was righteous to have a genocidal campaign on the heathens who refused to admit the authority and the almighty, omnipotent power of the blood-demanding gods' stolen authority over all human life, instead of their peaceful matriarch or mostly peaceful shamanic matriarchal cultures, thus having been the scene that created in a bloodbath the California mission system. Is it any question of why 14 or 15 of the people I can make eye contact with in this Aptos branch of the Santa Cruz County library system will look away, ignore me, get scared, or act awkward if I simply look at them or treat them like a decent human would in the pre-cell phone days. You know, of course, in the coast of California, in this beautiful town. And I was typing out these notes because I didn't have a notebook, and my little campmate wants to come get in the video. The only kind of lizards I approve of on this planet, the ones that are 3 inches long. So yeah, I mean, the idea for this video is, an idea for a book I've had for 20 years, and it just needs to, I have to do the shadow work to overcome that tragedy of the Sagittarius archetype of procrastination and all that. But, it's, yeah. The fallen, fake gods of the Matrix, the beings that created what everyone called the demiurge, Yaldabaoth, Lucifer, the Elohim, the ones that created the inverted society, the energy harvesting matrix. Wow. When you really examine, especially with the, over 100 years it took DARPA to weaponize the cell phone and then release it, and then the way they did that the last 20 years, especially that. Man, they really succeeded in getting people shoved up their own ass of survival so much that they didn't very rarely act like a human would in the old days, So, yeah, I mean, I'm from the so-called friendliest town in America, according to the Tourist Bureau. But, it's, of course, no surprise. People really think that they have to spend every moment locked in financial survival around here, Santa Cruz, California, from the homeless to the landlords. I mean, I have friends and acquaintances who are landlords who still feel like this, who usually must pay insane, exorbitant property taxes and have to run around and work 2 or 3 other jobs even though they own a house and rent it out. In short, the invisible hand of the market in desirable or expensive or super sexy places, as long as soulless 3D capitalism can rule over their minds, the majority of humanoids and humankind, and more than half of them watch the mainstream media or listen to the sick black magic pop music. Their subconscious is going to Their subconscious is going to agree with the archons' voices. Even if they are peaceful. Even if they're peaceful, they're never going to watch a single video from Trey's Myths and Tunes, because heaven forbid that they're not controlled by the filthy normal cube tech. The suicide rate in a county like Santa Cruz goes way up from the national average in the USA of less than 3% to over 10% in Santa Cruz County, just like Las Vegas. Okay, 1 out of 10 people you see, they're going to take their own self out. That's how pathological your town is. If you live in a place like Santa Cruz or Las Vegas, it tends to generate this outcome. I mean, even if you take away all of the Illuminati activity, it still has that, the fake capitalism still makes people feel that isolated. I think that adds to that. So, I thought years ago, before I ever started making video transmissions, that in Santa Cruz, the number one problem in Santa Cruz City proper is there's not enough people. Meaning souls or soul fragments, or not enough essence beings who are not simply just NPCs or caught in survival or NPEs. Don Miguel Ruiz, he had another book I read of his beside the Four Agreements was called The Mastery of Love, and I love these ideas that he said actually the one I wanted to mention for this video might have been from the Four Agreements, but in The Mastery of Love, he says to be in love has to be pouring from outside of you, something to that effect. But the idea I was going to say here was, I think it was the agreement to not take it personally. So So he said, he used this analogy of a movie theater. He said, say you're talking to someone, your friend or your boss, someone you hate or love, your wife or whatever. To the other person, you are just a side character in the movie. You're just over here. To you, they're the side character, you see? So we could be looking at the same scene and get totally different meanings, different perspectives. It's important, it's a good thing to keep in mind when you try to interact with other people, is that you have no idea where they're from or what they've been through. However, when you look at the vast amount of rates of people that are socially and morally and spiritually retarded, pretty well openly, they can't even hide it. You see why, this is really why, one of the main reasons, top several reasons why I began my channel, because I wanted to help put an end to this filthy problem, which again, because Lucifer 4 has a black hole in the place of a heart. He lost his connection to feel empathy. He created this archetype of narcissistic persona like 1,000,000 years ago. When he began this takeover, he lost his heart. He never lost his ability to mind control or control people with gadgets and invisible tech. But he has no awareness of morality or heart or social skills, so he doesn't want anyone else to have that. He pays people extra money to be narcissist psychopaths. He gives them a raise. He lets them run the company. He lets them become a mogul in Hollywood like P. Diddy if they're willing to, really embody his archetype, which is what we see there. He is embodying that archetype. And so he was put to the top, So, Lucifer 4's modern human design is the little me, like Diddy, the little me fighting everyone else and all else, the narcissist psychopath, killer, willing to kill and fight and torture everyone else just for themselves, which doesn't even exist anyway because it's the false self. So basically, just to kill and fight and torture, take over for the black hole. This is what we see in most majority politicians. Whereas enlightened people are fighting only ignorance. Truly enlightened people that are not trying to start a cult, they're really fighting ignorance. Okay, because gnosis, again, knowledge is the key. That wisdom shall set you free. If you don't have it, you're going to be locked in these psychological chains as long as you're not willing to do the shadow work and to discern, the process of discernment, to live in the gnosis. And this goes for me too. So, over 10% of these people in this town will do themselves in, because people don't exist. The majority of their lives, they some of these people that believe these horrible ideas, that when the archons tell them to take themselves, they've found out most are really soulless, and then accepted that, but they still think the archons are their own self. And the derogatory archonic voices then proceed to the ultimate harvest to get them to harvest their own selves. So sad. And you don't get to escape anything if you do that. You're going to go to a lot more lifetimes of harm and suffering. Most probably it means they'll be able to terrify you into more lifetimes on planet of hell, psychological hell. It is natural to want to leave. Get out or drug yourself out. When you notice, most humans don't find anything wrong with not giving a fuck. In places like Calcutta or San Francisco or Santa Cruz, they'll step over the dead or dying, or get accustomed to watching the sick, poor, and homeless die in their faces and not care at all. And you wonder, those of you who live in a small town somewhere where there's a lot of love, and you wonder, how is that possible, right? This is how mind controlled they are. Because they themselves, though they earn or receive a lot of money sometimes, are caught in survival. Truly, as long as we follow the pathetic social Darwinist narrative, we've already perished socially, psychically, and spiritually in that town, state, or country, where the vast aggregate, the vast majority, obeys the filthy idea that it's all about fighting everyone else for survival, little me. They're dead. They're dead to themselves. Like the narcissist, high on the scale of NPD, the false self version of reality, if you take it to the level of a town, that town is dead. That's why when you walk amongst them, when you go to the places, you just feel like, oh, they won't, because the archon, the ghost, the abusive, the SRA influence, the hauntedness of all the killing sprees that have happened, like the bloodbath that created this town, that's never cleared out. The Illuminati black magicians, they amplify the black magic. They keep it growing. They keep the wound. They keep scraping your wounds. The narcissist in your life keeps scraping the wound. So people will never be friendly in a place like that. Plus, I have a theory that where the homosexual thing is rapidly proliferated through, the universities and grown to a height through the. Again, I believe it's natural, and my idea comes from the book The Visions of Lame Deer. He said about 3 out of 100 people in the tribe would cross-dress or do the work with the opposite gender, and they accepted it, and they didn't want to kill him. So my thing is, I feel that it's natural for about 3%, and then it's promoted to be this huge thing because they want to, thin out the herd. So, but I have no right to judge who and which is which in that, and I'm not going to try. So, but still, it's also a part of this this social Darwinist narrative. This county actually got rid of at least a half dozen intentional communities prior to the 2020 lockdown. That's right. Santa Cruz County got rid of at least, I could count off 6 co-op houses. Got rid of them, with the zoning, brought the county commissioner, zoning commissioner in and told them they were breaking the rules and shut them all down. And the Illuminati activity is off the hook around here. One of the devil's lapdog's plaything towns. That's right. They think of this town as a plaything town where they go for vacation. There's probably at least a half dozen of these fools that are in the 500 richest families in the world who have empty mansions along Westcliff that they use less than a month out of the year and leave it all empty. Is there a correlation here? Sure, one cannot deny that a desirable place can and will jack up the rent inexorably as long as this shit keeps going the way it's going. Inexorably. But does that mean the values of remaining humans are lost in the marketplace? If sexuality itself is monetized or turned into a perversion or turned into some crazy thing like you can make up your own gender and do whatever you want as long as you don't reproduce. As long as you're obeying a crazy inverted narrative, you can do anything. And if you're straight, you better watch out. Because, they might want to take your baby and, consume it. I don't know. It's hard to say, But it certainly is a dangerous thing to do in a place like this. Unless you're some kind of bodhisattva, perhaps, with a lot of wealth. Because otherwise, you're going to be fighting for that kid. The Luciferians around here sure want to make it seem that way. Well, la-di-da. The world is getting torn apart, especially psychologically. But I have to get back to work. Humans need communities. Our false gods need us separate, suffering, lonely, and or caught in survival beast mode. Never to get out. never to do enough meditation or have enough financial sovereignty or even disease, insanity, or poverty, even to or wealth to go, I can listen to this person as long as I want. The mortgage is the mortal gauge of how much financial energy they can steal from you for the rest of your life. It's right there in the phonetics, right there in the etymology. Wake yourselves up and others to the truth, people. Please. It's getting very near, the point where they're going to have to take over more control if you don't do it now. As long as so few humans can even have the social courage to remain or go back to being human, in other words, to be like I attempt to be and be friendly and smile and be respectful, and humanity is being wiped out by the humanoid zombie apocalypse, at least in public spaces. Who are the zombies? Humans 2.0. Not only them, but all of those folks who will go along to get along, accept wage and tax slavery, refuse YIMBY, refuse to look at their own shortcomings in the rearview mirror, refusing to do any shadow work, or as Passio says, the black witches call them, the spiritually unbegun. Just a modicum of research. Just, a tenth as much research as I've done, or a fifth, a nickel on the dollar of research I've done into the mainstream media in the United States Rockefeller forced compulsory school system K through 12, and worse, its higher education corollary, really lower, U.S. University MK system. The majority of the United States universities being the grandest example of mind control weapons ever, probably, excluding cell phones. And televisions. Let's say the grandest social organization that has been used, repurposed to create white-collar slaves and white-collar gangsters, white-collar... What do you think fraternity and sorority rituals are? College, high school, college, fraternity, sorority rituals when they... the place where we used to play ultimate frisbee and smoke weed, they would do the high school ones, and these hot-looking girls in bikinis, and they'd make them wrestle in rotten eggs. And why do they do this kind of stuff? Because they're sick sadists? Well, because fraternities and sororities are gangs for the elites, gangs for the white collar, for the college system. So, once you get into a fraction of the research on that, like I say, even just do as I did and skim through Christopher Hitchens' book, The Great Mistake, about how in the last 50 years the 1% robber barons hijacked a large portion of that whole system. And any decent researcher can easily see all of that is designed to make you into a good, obedient, blue or white collar worker or debt slave, a person who never allows a single independent thought in, ideally, a person psychologically bashed over the head by overcrowdation. Like if you just look at how they treat the students at UCSC over here, smushing them into the buses, into the dorms like it was a really impoverished third world country, while their parents are paying $3,000 or $4,000 a month for this, housing abuse and bus abuse. So basically they're psychologically bashed over the head by overcrowdation, debt, and every conceivable type of subtle mind control torture to get them to comply with the attempted permanent, fully lie-based, loose-sucking false reality that you are here for your house. Mammon, or the L, and you are here for your house or apartment box. You are here for the matrix. You exist to serve God, Mammon, or the L, whichever God they meant, either one. And if you cannot use your supposed free will to create a busy sinness, where is it? If you're not willing to use your free will to earn money in a legal business, where is your free will? Unless you learn how to wildcraft or hunt or fish and you're willing to kill some animals and live off killing. Or steal eggs, steal placenta from a chicken, steal milk from a goat or a cow or a sheep. Unless you figure out those skills, how are you going to live? How are you going to live? Unless you know how to farm. If you point out the survival beast mode contest is a fake reality, who will be your friend? Might have to make them online because, man, people really don't like it. It might take a couple years to make 100 subscribers if you do that, man. People really don't like to hear it. When you see most folks through all of these million years of torture and now they're running like a chicken with their head cut off if they don't have 2 or 3 jobs or make a lot of money to try to survive. When you see most folks through all these million years of torture actually now believe their little soul fragment or NPC or NPE possessed ideation inside that one body, if they're that one spirit fragment in that one little body, to be their real self. When you see that that is the normie, mogul human condition, you can see we have a serious tall order to get back to acting like humans and in the wars. Hence, the endless wars go on. The box slavery cannot ever stop. Most of these people in my sight, meaning in the library yesterday, aside from just wanting to be respectful to the rule of the library to not say anything and engage, most of the people in my sight between me and the window there in the Aptos Library branch with a view of the glorious Pacific Ocean seem to feel as if they must pretend no one has a soul. I mean, that's what it looked like. Like they have to, like a normal human, like in California coast in a rich town, they kind of like, they have to act like no one has a soul. After all, I had a backpack full of my belongings. I mean, I look like a homeless or a wild person, a traveler, a transient. They might think I'm homeless or a transient. And, very few people have the courage to smile back or nod at someone like that. I mean, I might be on meth. I mean, in a sick narcissist society, why would I deserve the acknowledgement of a nod or a smile back? Particularly with a large backpack full of my belongings. I mean, I must want something. I must want to beg them or have sex with them or con them out of their money or kill them, right? I mean, this is the way a person thinks. They think this sort of shit, survival-based, fear-based thoughts before they think about, what is it doing to my soul or this other person to not nod back or to not smile back or to act like they're not there. Even the people that never took the experiment, this is how ingrained the social hierarchy, the filthy idea of survival contest is in their subconscious minds, in the average human condition. I mean, that's really sad when you think about it. And that's why I've got to do a lot more work on this front. So, in a sick narcissist society, if I don't have something they want, they don't even consider it like a normal person. When you see how fully sick and inverted this world is, you see why I often want to be a spiritual kindergarten and first grade teacher to humanity. Obviously, clock time is a trick, an invention of Chronos. For Bible thumpers, it is always only then, the afterlife, the future, after they left their body. That's right, they act nice, like a citizen of Thailand, forcibly, because they're in Thailand. It's the government, but for a Bible thumper, they better be good all the time, because they're thinking about eternity. It is so for them. It's only then. It's only the future. They're being nice, but not for life, not to live, for death, to get into heaven, right? So for a loser Furian or a New Cager or a guru or a materialist, it is only now, right? They're always like, it's always only now, right? Well, in reality, I'm going to tell you the real truth about now. In reality, it is always the timeless now and oneness in eternity. Got it? Confused yet? Is that confusing or simple? Whose choice is that? Stargates and butt plugs. Well, unfortunately, I haven't 100% overcome the habit of checking out some pornography and long enough to have not seen a butt plug. And of course, it exemplifies the kind of idea that Loser 4 wants to insert into the popular culture, that you want to plug up the hole where shit comes out and allow shit to come out of your mouth and go through your mind. And they say that Jerusalem was built on the Stargate. The Anunnaki gods, they want to cover over the Stargate and control everything, right? So when you think about remote viewing, when you think about leaving your body after death, when you think about traveling to other dimensions, other planets, other galaxies, other universes, in a fear-based society, we can't even think about that. But if you're really open-minded, you realize that the idea of a butt plug, the idea of butt sex, the idea of that you wanted to rape someone or harm them, the idea that you're sadistic, you want to do anything to harm anyone else for pleasure at all, it doesn't stem from humans. It stems from these dark ETs. And they covered the Stargates because they want you to think that you have to do what they say and go to heaven, which is really recycle, or go to hell, which is really recycle. So it's the same with the sun. We see the sunshine. During the daylight, we can only see one star. At nighttime, we look out, we see how many stars can you see? Well, the same is true with possibilities. The same is true with friends. The same is true with being friendly. If you're respectful, if you have faith in the Holy Ghost, the Christ, Sophia, in your heart, your wisdom, your gnosis, if you trust yourself, you can make a friend. It's very hard. In the process of healing from narcissistic abuse, narcissistic family abuse, especially if it was physical or, just all of it, it's very challenging. It takes some serious psychological work. But the average human, they haven't even thought about that. They're just trying to, it's a really strong, the process of dumbing down humans into these atomized automatons has been, it's been going for a million years, but it's been very successful, and it's really sad, and it's really why one of the main reasons why I make videos, really, honestly, because I'm trying to help people remember back to the real, to try to remember the ancient history and the future where we can actually be human again and not be these idiot slave humanoid robots. Traveling freely and free sex. If you can travel with your mind, if there's 0-point tech, we don't need gasoline, we don't need the bus, the train, the planes. But, again, they try to do like the women's elimination movement, the New Cage movement, the swinging 60s. They try to promote free sex, like go have an orgy. Instead of it just being Satanist like in P. Diddy's secret room, it was like all the hippies were promoted to go have loose, free sex. Swinging 60s. Then they brung out the it's probably a genetically designed disease called or thing called AIDS in the 1980s, or HIV, and that really got rid of the free sex movement. And then, of course, the convoy video 2020 really terrified a lot more people into never being friendly. So we've had these sexual and anti-life takeover and disease agents inserted into the timeline, inserted into our lives to try to get us to be terrified of friendliness as well, of course. So you see why I feel like I got to be a spiritual first grade teacher to people if they still obey the mainstream media, which was made by some of the most morally retarded spiritual imbeciles on the planet, with great budgets, beautiful faces, bodies, and special effects. In short, the black witches down the highway in Hollywood did their job well and successfully. And as Mark Passio has reminded us, there's hundreds of thousands of black magicians everywhere around the planet to make sure everything goes smoothly just how the fallen ones want it to go. Their archon overlords still applaud them, as most folks still resemble them psychologically, and their media lapdogs, even physically, they dress and make their appearance like a Luciferic clown. And their media lapdogs, still self-possessed social and spiritual retards, still caught in survival mode, but with great gadgets, surveilling us better and better all the time, which was one of the main intents to begin with. The wealthiest criminals allowed to do whatever they want. And, with our unelected king of the USA in the Oval Office in particular, we're subconsciously encouraged to think might is right and money is power, and people who can make a lot of money are always right. What could go wrong with this idea? Why would my content be shadow banned aside from the obvious reasons about exposing those overlords? The beast wants you to stay stuck in social, spiritual, and moral retardation, because then you'll continue to go back to the big farm after you get recycled and memory wiped over and over and over, ad nauseum, forever, permanently. They want you to stay. They want you to stay stuck in retardation through alcohol or other drugs to get you off on their hooks. In other words, when you get really high, especially on bad drugs or like alcohol and bad drugs, you get stuck on their hooks. But would a Rastafarian, would a person who's spiritual who uses tons of ganja get intimidated into coming back because they using the cannabis? Can they get intimidated back into coerced back into compliance because they wanted to get high? The 1% and their masters want you as food, customers, addicted, sick, and fattened cattle. It's a bunch of antibiotics, easy for the milking in every way possible. In this mode of financial survival and often enforced social retardation, where is there a place for spirituality, social skills, and civility? Everywhere, really. It's needed everywhere. If the Dark Lords can program these out, more the better for them. But with no morality being broadcast from within their fake-ass holy buildings or media shows, they have no real foundation. I mean, like, Back in the days of Desi Lou Studios, when they had the Andy Griffith Show, and then later in the 70s and 80s they had the show Taxi and Cheers. Hey man, they tried to put some morality into sitcoms back in those days. But now, they don't even try to hide their filthy satanic garbage they promote as their reality. That's how far into the normalization and mainstreaming of Satanism has gone. So, with having no real foundation, and humanity is already socially and spiritually dead. When they achieve the relative mainstreaming of Satanism, it was a huge milestone. And this is only, again, in the last several decades or whatever. After 30 years of the Ms. Magazine psyop, many folks, especially here in the West Coast, think straight men, if they're not really wealthy and successful, are mostly worthless losers. When you acknowledge not just guys who are disabled and guys who are hermits, a lot of guys that you would think women would find attractive are thought of as losers because of this sick inverted culture. When you acknowledge even a tiny fragment of the social engineering programs that have been successfully deployed on the Western human cattle, especially the West Coast, by their masters from the era of Joseph Mengele until now, you cannot deny that they achieved their goals quite well. They turned a lot of humans into Pavlovian dogs quite well. In addition, all of this makes it painfully obvious the dark controllers and false gods of humanity have a lot of stolen power, for real, and a lot of bodies geared to be a lot of automatons designed merely for soulless loose extraction, a whole lot of black hole sucking power of the great nothing, vampirizing and sucking all the psychically and physically, and also all the addicts, especially them, into a hologramic psychological prison and loose extraction farm that eventually soon falls into a black hole called Abaddon, an actual black hole. But you were given free will, supposedly, on this sacred, exquisitely beautiful divine globe. And if you want to be a hermit, and wow, it's just, you can delude yourself into thinking, oh, it's a divine paradise, but go around other humans and see how they behave. So again, it could be, with the shit tons of work of all types of labor for several centuries, it could be repurposed. It could be turned back into a divine being that it's really supposed to be. It's going to take a lot of work. And then, after you are given free will on this extremely beautiful globe, the demiurge rapidly figured out how to take everything away. Psychologically at first with dogmas and religions, then the so-called industrial revolution, then the terraforming of the sky into space fence, geoengineering, and then humans 2.0, and through all these different deeper and deeper levels, turning the divine, sacred Christos human race in this divine globe into a hell realm, in many parts of it at least. And so, he kept on progressing in his intellectual and technological powers and tyranny and, ritual abuse, taking and blood-killing taking sprees. But he never grew in his heart. He never became human. He never learned how to have any respect. He never learned how to be a human. Over the centuries, we actually killed and tortured each other so much by his divine decree, jihad, loose decrees, that now it has become normalized for most humans to be socially and morally retarded, narcissistic, or NGAF, to not give a fuck. Thanks, Hollywood. How is it that in certain neighborhoods, I have been told that in certain neighborhoods in England where certain families named Rothschilds live in these massive mansions, it's normal, I heard, in those neighborhoods, to have no clue what's going on in your neighbor's mansion and the other neighbor's mansion or anyone in your streets, to have no clue what goes on in any of the mansions on your street. Well, makes sense, right, if you were them, right? Versus Charleston or a small town, USA. Everyone knows everyone's business, which kind of sucks, the Mayberry syndrome. However, you can't, do the horrible things they do to children in those mansions in a small town very easily. I mean, they do, but, they get caught a lot more easily. So, the point is that, I love this man, the South African dude. I can't think of his name. It's the One Small Town initiative idea he has, and he's even brung it into a currency thing. But yeah. So, what do you think? I mean, contrast those two. Which is more real to you? Those streets where those big, huge mansions are, or that small town? I mean, maybe you can bring back respect and decency to your region. But it sure is a tall order in this day and age in 2025, so don't hold your breath on it. Just do the best you can. Explain briefly to those you feel still have retained some of their moral essence why you will be polite or acting old-fashioned. I mean, some of these people from some place like San Francisco, LA, Seattle, New York City, you kind of, if you like them or something, and you kind of got to be like, well, it's just, I could say I'm from Charleston, but just, you're like, well, I'm just trying to bring back decency, and just, they're gonna think it's weird and awkward when you act respectful. I know it's retarded, but you just have to bear with them. All they've ever known is how to be a pushy slave for money. So, I mean, that's what they were taught to behave like. So, even if they're cool. So that's the thing. You can't judge any of these people who are socially retarded, because that might be all they've ever known. So. You can tell them you can just tell them you want to be polite or act old-fashioned. You can even tell them you're sick of watching humanity turn rapidly into a robot, or sick of how much a cyborg it already is. Dr. Drew says we need a rational revolution. I agree, but also a social decency revolution. I mean, a tiny fraction of the people still have it, but there's too much of a tiny amount. Not because you are a hero narcissist. Not because you're going to save that person's whole life. No. Not because you're a hero narcissist patting yourself on the back. No. Not because you are a goody two-shoes Samaritan, a loving socialist, or any other such self-aggrandizing reason. You act like a respectful human being because that is what you are. That's the hologram you really are in. There can be no souls or future for those who are adamantly obedient to the anti-life behaviors and fake inverted ideations of a post-human fake AI plan. You recognize, as a respectful human, the importance of morality and decency, because you are moral and decent. You recognize the wealthy yet spiritually pathetic could not get their own head out of their ass long enough to lead anyone or ever act decent, really, on their personal level. You recognize, or very, very, very few of them, you recognize the human condition has been greatly dumbed down and then sickened. Yet you know this is not its real, original, and final state. A respectful person might have never even watched one of my videos or heard of a Gnostic Christian, but they know this intuitively. You, as Gandhi said, become the change you want to see. And once again, you treat people as you'd like to be treated, whether they're ugly and dirty and homeless or rich or whatever. Poor or rich, you have basic social decency. You recognize the rotten part is going to fall off if it isn't cleaned out. This doesn't just go with fruit and vegetables. This goes with everything. Human bodies and souls and spirits, essences. Our minds are similar. You choose to not identify with the rot, but clean it out. You are not a globalist liar parroting good words like sustainable. You are an actual humanitarian instead, not a socialist torturer. You are a soul having a human experience, or an essence being having a human experience. You have inner respect. And if you have the courage, you will create the best day possible in whatever situation you're in whatever level of pain you're in whatever level of awareness you're in. And when you remember Christ Sophia in your heart, you will participate in making this world better in that moment. Because then you are within the love in you.